Have you ever noticed that at night the world seems to change? Sounds change, time slows down. What was once the rustling of leaves during the day is now a whisper that seems to carry ancient meanings. In times gone by, when electricity was still just a dream and the sky was the only light at dawn, the sounds of the night were viewed with reverence. A crack in the wood, perhaps the soul of an ancestor passing through the house, a message from the gods of the forest. For the ancients, silence was not the absence of sound. It was a sacred stage where every sound came to life. Today, you will discover how, for thousands of years, humanity has listened to these sounds and seen in them signs of the divine, of spirits, or of the stars. Hey guys! Tonight, the Chronicler will take you on a journey through one of the most curious and mysterious experiences our ancestors shared across continents and centuries, the sounds of the night. Imagine yourself walking barefoot on a narrow, dusty path of a village that hasn't existed for 2,000 years. The air is still warm from the day's sun, but the darkness has already swallowed the sky, revealing a blanket of stars so bright they look almost close enough to touch. A dog barks somewhere far off. A soft breeze shakes a fig tree beside a crumbling wall. You hear the rustle of leaves, or is it something else? To ancient ears, every sound after sunset had meaning, divine meaning. You probably wouldn't survive this, by the way, not because of monsters or spirits, but because there's no Wi-Fi and the outhouse is a solid 20 meters from the house. Pitch black? No, thank you. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you enjoy falling asleep inside history with us. Tell me where you're watching from, what time it is, and what kind of day you had. I read them all. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself surrounded by mud brick homes, oil lamps flickering through thin slits in the walls, casting long golden fingers across the ground. The day's noise, goats, gossip, hammers on bronze, is gone. All that remains is the sound of crickets, or maybe spirits. The ancient world believed the night was alive. To sleep was to step halfway into another realm, and every whisper, creak, or thump outside your door was a messenger from that space between. In this moment, you're a traveler, a listener. The stars aren't just stars, they are watchers. Their silence is deceiving, because in the hush of ancient nights, people heard them speak. The buzz of insects, the hoot of an owl, the creaking of a wooden beam, none of these sounds were just background noise. They were interpreted, sometimes feared, often ritualized. A single knock on the door after sundown could mean a god was watching, or death was calling. Historians still debate whether the emphasis on night sounds was spiritual or practical. After all, in a world without electric light, people had to develop acute senses just to survive. But over time, survival sharpened into storytelling, and storytelling into sacred truth. The line between a fox sneaking through a vineyard and a demon crawling through your dreams, paper thin, and usually written on a scroll by a terrified monk who hadn't slept in 3 nights. You feel the wind shift slightly. It moves the long grasses in a rhythmic sway. Somewhere nearby, someone is softly singing, or maybe it's a trick of the ear. In many ancient cultures, the night was personified. It had moods, it played tricks, it comforted, and it punished. The sound of wind passing through reeds was once interpreted as a goddess sighing, mourning the passage of the sun. You don't need to believe in spirits to feel that. Just close your eyes. The night hums like a lullaby, one composed before history was even written. There's something deeply human about filling silence with meaning. In a world full of threats and wonder, the unknown had to be explained. And sound, invisible, fleeting, became the language of the mysterious. No surprise that most early myths begin in the dark, where something unseen makes a sound, and the listener builds an entire universe from it. Your eyes adjust to the starlight. You're not afraid, not really, but you can't help but feel watched. Not by anything dangerous, just by time itself. As if the wind carries memories, and the distant howl you hear is not a wolf, but the past calling softly. The fire still crackles softly behind you as the scene shifts. Now, you find yourself standing in the heart of an endless desert, beneath a sky so clear it feels hand-scrubbed by the stars themselves. The dunes around you roll like frozen waves of honey-colored silk, and nestled among them are tents, sturdy, time-worn structures made of woven goat hair, each panel embroidered with patterns that speak of ancient migrations and whispered legends. Then comes the sound. A low whistle snakes its way between the tents, brushing against fabric and vanishing into the vastness. To you, it may seem like mere wind, but to the nomadic tribes that lived here, it was the desert speaking. You pause, listening more closely. There's a camel settling down in the sand with a soft grunt, a distant jingle, maybe the anklet of a traveler, maybe a wandering spirit. Here, every sound holds meaning. A creaking rope, a sign the storm spirits are near. The rustle of a flap with no wind, a traveler from the realm of the dead has arrived early for tea. You think I'm joking? Not entirely. Among the Bedouins, sounds of the night weren't just background noise. They were signals, omens, sometimes even warnings. And yes, somewhere between the whispers of gin and the rustle of grain sacks, someone always blamed a fart on the wind. Scholars still debate whether these interpretations were developed to help with desert survival, auditory navigation perhaps, using echoes and shifting wind, or if they grew into mystical practices over time. Either way, by moonlight, sound became something sacred. Many tribes believed that the wind could carry the voices of ancestors. If you listened just right, they said, you could hear their advice or their complaints, depending on how well you'd lived that day. Someone nearby plucks a stringed instrument, its notes floating on the dry air like melted glass. It's not just music, it's protection. In some traditions, playing an instrument at night cast a sort of sonic net around the camp. Harmful spirits couldn't cross the vibrations. Of course, neither could light sleepers, but no one complained out loud. You breathe in the smell of firewood and dust. Everything here feels charged, not in a threatening way, but as if the desert itself has paused to listen. And you are the reason why. You walk slowly, your steps muffled by the sand. Each sound is a character, a signal, a storyteller. The desert didn't need words. It had wind, groans, animal calls, and silence, the most eloquent of them all. You wonder if the people who lived here ever truly slept, or did they simply rest their eyes, waiting for the night to speak again. Today, cities drown these voices in air conditioners and glowing screens. But back then, every whisper was a chapter, and silence was a sacred page. From the low rustle of a scorpion passing by to the groan of the stars stretching overhead, the desert offered a full symphony to those brave or quiet enough to listen. You climb a dune, the sand warm even in the night air. From the crest, you see the camp below. Flickering lights, soft shadows, muted murmurs. The wind brushes your cheek with the gentleness of a forgotten lullaby. And then, far off, something howls. Not in anger, but in declaration. A sound that exists only at night, and only for those who understand that mystery doesn't mean danger. Sometimes it simply means the universe wants to say hello. Stone. That's what you feel next under your bare feet. Cold, ancient, and dusted with the fine powder of centuries. You're now inside the belly of a temple, somewhere in the Mediterranean. The air is thick with incense, and each breath feels like you're inhaling time itself. Shadows flicker across towering columns, carved with stories that no one alive fully remembers. The moonlight streams through narrow slits in the ceiling, forming glowing lines on the marble floor, like some forgotten god's fingerprint left just for you. You think it's silent here, but it's not. Listen closely. A drip echoes, unnaturally slow. A flutter, maybe a bat, maybe the winged spirit of a priest still pacing between rituals. There's a sound like whispering stone, though nothing moves. In these temples, acoustics were everything. Not just so a priest could be heard. No, these structures were designed to manipulate the soul. Some amphitheaters and chambers were tuned to resonate with the human voice. Speak in the right spot, and your words seem to arrive from above, divine, untraceable. Imagine how unnerving that was when no one told you it was just a trick of sound. Or was it? Historians still argue whether these effects were intentional engineering or beautiful accidents. Some say they were acoustical miracles crafted by architectural genius. Others say they were lucky echoes turned into superstition. Either way, the result was the same: reverence, fear, awe. Even today, tourists stumble into ancient ruins and swear they hear voices. Most assume it's wind or tour guides hiding behind columns, but believers will insist. The statues talk when they feel like it. And oh, the statues. You pass by one now, its eyes blank, but its posture oddly conversational. Many cultures believed that the night brought breath to stone. Temples were often busiest at dawn and dusk, but midnight? That was spirit time. Priests might leave offerings then, not because gods required snacks, but because the silence was thin. The veil, as some put it, was easier to poke through. In Egypt, certain sanctuaries were designed so that a statue would speak, a hidden priest using copper pipes to mimic a divine voice. You'd laugh, but imagine hearing that after a week of fasting. You continue deeper, and the sounds follow. A scratch, a sigh, the soft fall of dust disturbed. The temple breathes. Not in a literal sense, of course, but the materials settle with the cooling air, and their creaks are, well, interpretive. Ancient people heard these and wove stories. A god approving, a curse awakening, or just a mouse wearing sandals. Suddenly, a deeper tone hums through the chamber. It's subtle but long, a resonance in the wall that buzzes through your bones. You're standing in a sweet spot where centuries of stone design align to vibrate with particular pitches. Monks used to chant here, their low tones not just spiritual, but vibrational. Healing, some claimed. Hypnosis, others whispered. Night in these temples wasn't just darkness. It was activation. Sounds that daylight masked came alive. A creak wasn't random, it was a response. A gust wasn't just wind, it was the gods exhaling after a long sermon. You walk past an altar, its edges smoothed by 1,000 hands. There's a silence now, not empty, but expectant. The kind of silence that leans in. It's broken by one sound, a drop of water landing in a copper basin. The ring it leaves behind stretches into your spine like a thread. You imagine the priest who placed that bowl there knew exactly what he was doing. Here, the night doesn't echo, it listens. You step outside the temple, and suddenly the air feels different. It's not just cooler, it pulses. You're in a forest now, and it's not your modern idea of wilderness. There are no distant hums of cars or the occasional ring of a smartphone. This is primeval woodland, tangled and towering, where the trees seem older than memory itself. Their twisted trunks creak, their leaves rustle in strange rhythms, and somewhere above, owls argue in languages older than Latin. To ancient ears, the forest at night wasn't a backdrop, it was an entity. Every rustle was a message. Every snap of a twig could mean a spirit approaching, or just a very clumsy deer. You pause, hearing a deep groan from the treetops. It's the sound of wood stretching, shifting. But to a Celt in the Iron Age, that might have been the sigh of a tree god. The Druids believed trees were living beings with personalities, moods, and grudges, especially oaks. Don't disrespect an oak, they remembered things. There's a breeze now, but it doesn't behave. It moves through the branches like it's selecting a melody. And you remember reading that the Greeks called some of these trees talking oaks. At Dodona, priests would listen to the rustling of sacred groves to interpret divine messages. Birds in the trees, winds in the leaves, these weren't background noises, they were language. Divination through forest whispers, they called it. Probably wouldn't work as an app. A twig cracks behind you. You turn, but it's just a rabbit, right? Still, your heart thumps. In Norse culture, forests were doorways to other realms. Trolls, elves, land spirits, all said to gather when the moon rose. That's why so many old folktales warn children not to go wandering after dark. It wasn't about wolves. It was about everything else. And let's be honest, wolves at least have decency. Spirits might invite you to dinner and then turn your bones into wind chimes. You keep walking, careful with each step. The path is barely a path anymore. Roots tangle your feet like ancient fingers, and soft moss muffles your movements. Above you, something hoots once, then twice. Some cultures believed double hoots were omens. Others thought they were just flirtatious owls. You choose to believe the latter. There's a stream ahead, glinting in moonlight. You kneel beside it and listen. It gurgles and chatters over smooth stones, laughing in watery syllables. Ancient people often gave rivers voices and names. To them, streams could speak, sometimes kindly, sometimes with warnings. The Romans even appointed priests to certain springs, tasked with interpreting their sounds. Imagine having a job title like sacred hydrologist. A breeze returns, brushing past your ears like a whisper. But it's not random. It carries something, maybe a pattern, maybe a secret. Ancient shamanic cultures trained themselves to read the winds. They'd lie awake all night, cataloging every sound, Branch creaks, distant howls, insect rhythms. These weren't nuisances. They were maps, guides through both nature and spirit. Historians still debate whether these interpretations were truly spiritual or clever survivalism. Was that rustle a vision or a predator? Did the night sing, or did people just desperately need meaning in a terrifying world? Either way, the result is the same. You begin to hear the forest as a conversation, and for once, you're not just listening, you're part of it. As you rise to continue your path, you notice something odd. The trees seem to have rearranged slightly. You could have sworn that bent pine wasn't there before, but it stands now, like a silent observer, watching, waiting, probably judging your posture. One last gust sweeps through, shaking the canopy with 1,000 sighs. And in that moment, it feels less like wind and more like memory, as if the forest has recognized you, not as a threat, not as a guest, but as someone who remembers what the night once meant. The ground softens beneath your feet as you leave the desert behind. Now you walk among twisted trunks and silver-green leaves that shimmer gently under the moonlight. The stars above are still bright, but their sharpness is muted by the density of branches. You're in an ancient olive grove, somewhere along the Mediterranean, perhaps in Crete, or the hills near Delphi, or even in the Galilean countryside. The air is cooler here, thick with the scent of crushed leaves and earth, and the night sounds have changed again. You hear the rustle of small creatures, the distant hoot of an owl, and the almost imperceptible creak of branches swaying like old joints groaning in their sleep. Here, nighttime was sacred, not just for rest, but for ritual. In classical Greece, the groves were places of worship. They believed trees could speak, not in words, but in omens, especially when the wind passed through them. You place your hand on the bark of an old tree. It's rough, gnarled, and cold, yet there's something deeply comforting about it. The ancient Greeks called such trees morai, sacred olive trees that were thought to be planted by Athena herself. Damaging one? Punishable by exile or death. You probably wouldn't survive this, by the way. A breeze picks up, soft but with rhythm. It flows through the branches, making the leaves whisper secrets in a language older than Greek. You close your eyes and just listen. There's a rustling in patterns, gentle, then fast, then still again. In ancient times, priests and oracles claimed these patterns were messages from the gods. In Dodona, the oldest Hellenic oracle site, priests would sleep beneath sacred oaks and listen to the wind in the leaves. They'd hear predictions, warnings, even personal advice. Today, we call that hallucination. Back then, it was national policy. Somewhere behind you, a nightbird cries, a short, clipped sound that echoes off the grove like a breath caught in time. You turn your head, instinctively checking your surroundings. It's quiet again, that eerie, holy kind of quiet that makes your heart beat just a little louder. In Roman times, such groves were considered places where the boundary between this world and the next was thin. And some Romans believed that at night, spirits, especially those of philosophers or poets, wandered these trees, looking for someone to hear the rest of their unfinished thoughts. You keep walking, brushing your fingers against low-hanging branches. One snaps softly under your touch, and you flinch, not from fear, but from reverence. There's something sacred here, and it doesn't want to be disturbed. You remember a story about Pythagoras. Supposedly, he refused to sleep indoors for years, preferring instead to lay under trees and listen to what he called the music of the spheres. The idea that stars and planets emitted a constant sound as they moved. That sound, he said, was easier to hear when the world around you was utterly still, like now. You sit beneath a particularly ancient-looking olive tree. Its roots are exposed, winding over the soil like sleeping serpents. From here, the sky peeks through the branches in broken patches. You notice how the leaves shimmer even when there's no wind. A visual illusion, perhaps? Or maybe, as old mystics believed, a sign that the tree is breathing, watching, remembering. Suddenly, the grove emits a new sound, the synchronized clicking of insects hidden in the brush. It's a dry, pulsing rhythm, like fingers drumming on parchment. The Greeks might have said it was the dryads, the spirits of trees, making their presence known. Historians still debate whether such beliefs were metaphorical or taken literally. Some inscriptions suggest absolute faith in the sentience of trees. Others hint at more symbolic interpretations. Either way, the night is thick with meaning. You lie back on the earth, eyes fixed on the broken canopy above. A cloud drifts lazily past the moon, and for a moment you forget what century you're in. Everything around you, the breeze, the trees, the subtle chorus of crickets, feel like it's performing for you. Not because you're special, but because you're finally quiet. The air cools slightly. Your eyes grow heavier. And as you begin to slip into the thin veil between waking and sleep, you imagine the ancient philosophers, the wandering poets, the sacred priests, all laying in this same silence, listening. The desert dust settles behind you, and as your dreamlike journey unfolds, the land around you begins to shift again, first subtly, then unmistakably. The air turns saltier, moister. The night wind carries the distant hush of waves rolling over pebbled shores. Soon, you're walking beside the Aegean Sea. Moonlight glints over the water like molten silver, and the stars above mirror it in perfect harmony. A cool breeze brushes your skin, teasing the hem of your robe. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the faint strumming of a lyre. Imagined, perhaps, or a memory echoing from a long-lost festival night. You arrive at a cliff's edge, where a small temple clings precariously to the rocks, gazing out at the sea like a sentinel. Welcome to the world of ancient Greece, where the night was not just a backdrop, but a canvas on which gods painted signs with sound. The Greeks were keen listeners. They didn't just observe the night, they interpreted it. The rustle of olive leaves, the hoot of an owl, the creak of a ship's mast. Each noise had a meaning, each silence a message. They believed in omens carried by winds, in dreams delivered by moonlight, and in voices that emerged only when the sun went down. You step into the temple's threshold. It's modest but powerful. The floor is worn smooth by centuries of sandals and prayers. In the center, a circular opening in the roof reveals the stars above, perfectly framed, as if the gods themselves designed the architecture for stargazing. Here, oracles once whispered their prophecies, often inspired by nothing more than the rustling of leaves, the direction of wind, or the crackling of flames. One particularly famous oracle at Dodona received divine messages through the sound of oak leaves stirred by the breeze. Yes, you heard that right. An entire belief system based on listening to trees. And somehow it worked, or at least people acted like it did. You find a corner to sit. The stone is cold at first, then oddly comforting. The wind whistles through narrow corridors, creating a tone like a flute played by ghosts. It's not eerie, it's melodic, rhythmic. And you understand why the Greeks thought Apollo, god of music and light, also ruled over prophecy. After all, music is just organized sound, and prophecy? Perhaps it's just understanding the tune of the universe before it plays out. As you rest, you notice the sounds around you shift subtly. Crickets chirp in layered patterns, waves slap against rocks with metronomic regularity, and the distant owl sings its lonesome chorus into the night. Historians still debate whether the rituals of Greek temples were grounded more in mysticism or politics. After all, many oracles were suspiciously supportive of powerful kings. But that doesn't change the reality. Ancient Greeks deeply believed that the night could speak, and that those attuned to its song could change the fate of nations. A flicker of torchlight draws your gaze. In the shadows of the temple, you glimpse the shape of a priestess wrapped in pale linen, her face turned toward the sea, unmoving. Maybe she's listening. Or maybe she's part of your imagination, stitched together by the quiet power of this moment. Either way, she fits. You feel her presence, calm and unmoved like the stars above. Suddenly, a gust of wind sweeps through the temple, catching the open flame of a torch. It flutters, then steadies, casting strange shadows that dance across the marble. You smile. The ancient Greeks would have interpreted that as a sign. Perhaps Poseidon is restless tonight, or maybe Athena approves of your presence. You lean back, letting the marble cradle your spine, and close your eyes. The wind sings, the stars hum, and the Aegean night wraps itself around you like a lullaby written in the language of waves and whispers. The world slows. You feel it, not with logic, but with instinct. Something ancient is watching and listening and waiting. The salty mist of the Aegean fades behind you, and now the air grows dry again, drier than before. The scent of brine is replaced by dust and myrrh. Sand crunches softly beneath your sandals, stretching endlessly in every direction. Stars burn like frozen fire across a velvet sky, and the wind, oh, the wind. It whistles across the dunes with a voice all its own. You've arrived in the heart of the Arabian desert, and this, dear traveler, is where night itself was once a storyteller. You crouch beside a fire, the only beacon for miles, its flames dancing low and golden. Around you, the darkness stretches like an ocean, vast and unknowable. But here, under the stars, silence is not emptiness, it's potential. Every rustle, every breeze, every shifting grain of sand carries a message if you know how to listen. The Bedouins did. For them, the desert night was a sacred realm, filled with spirits, jinn, and the distant music of a universe always speaking in riddles. Behind you, a tent flutters. Someone inside hums a tune older than memory. In ancient Arabia, oral tradition was everything. Words were power, especially when spoken in the dark. Poets, called shairs, were believed to commune with spirits of the unseen, creatures made of smokeless fire, who whispered verses into their ears as the campfire crackled. That's right, poetry by jinn collaboration, not exactly your average writing partner. As you sip something warm from a clay cup, perhaps spiced camel milk or bitter coffee, you hear it, the low, rhythmic thump of distant hooves. not approaching, just echoing from somewhere else. It might be a memory of a caravan long gone, or just the desert mimicking the past. Historians still debate whether early Arabic poetry evolved from tribal chants or supernatural inspiration. But one thing's certain, the night inspired verses that outlived kingdoms. Your guide, an elder wrapped in robes the color of midnight, sits across from you and speaks in a low, melodic tone. He tells you of the sir, the hidden secrets of the desert, the belief that certain dunes whisper names at night, names of those who once vanished there. He chuckles gently, saying, "You probably wouldn't survive this, by the way," then tosses another pinch of incense into the fire, sending fragrant smoke curling into the air like script across parchment. You lie back on a rug, woven with patterns older than empires, staring at the stars. They're not just points of light here, they're guides, companions, even judges. The constellation Orion hangs overhead, known across cultures, but revered here as a hunter forever pursuing something he'll never catch. The wind shifts again. It sounds like a flute, or a woman laughing, or a warning. You can't tell. That's the magic of it. In this part of the world, the sounds of the night weren't just interpreted, they were curated. Tent openings were designed to face certain directions for maximum breeze and minimal haunting. Campfires were positioned not only for warmth, but to avoid drawing in wandering spirits. Even snoring was explained by jinn mischief, an ancient excuse you might want to try next time your partner complains. You close your eyes, and the sounds wrap around you like a lullaby stitched from silence and suggestion. A hyena laughs somewhere far away. A breeze rustles through palm fronds that shouldn't even be here, and the sand murmurs again, as if remembering footsteps long erased by wind. As you drift, you wonder, maybe those ancient travelers weren't trying to conquer the desert. Maybe they were just trying to understand its voice. And maybe, tonight, it's trying to understand yours. The sands have long since slipped from your shoes, and now your feet touch cool stone, worn smooth by centuries of prayer, ritual, and bare footsteps echoing under vast domes. You stand beneath a temple arch somewhere deep in the Indian subcontinent, where the night is not silent but symphonic. The scent of sandalwood and marigold lingers in the warm air, and distant bells chime like cosmic punctuation marks. You're about to discover a culture where every sound, natural or man-made, was woven into the divine. Above you, thunder rolls lazily across the horizon. Not the crashing kind that sends you under the bed, but a deep, sustained growl, like the slow breath of a sleeping god. You feel it in your ribs before you hear it in your ears. Ancient Hindus didn't fear such sounds, they revered them. The night sky wasn't empty, it was home to the gods who spoke in clouds, lightning, and distant drum rolls of rain. Hey guys, tonight the Chronicler will take you on a journey through the mystic halls of sound and stone. Oh wait, that was the intro, wasn't it? Force of habit. Just checking if you're still with me. Anyway, around the temple complex, everything is designed with purpose. Columns are carved not only for strength or beauty, but to resonate. That's right. Some ancient temples were acoustic masterpieces. Clap in certain courtyards and the sound travels in perfect loops. Chant beneath certain domes and the echo lasts longer than your attention span. Historians still debate whether this was divine design or architectural coincidence. You already know what the chronicler believes. You settle beside a monk who says nothing but gestures to the night beyond the stone gates. Cicadas begin their chorus, joined by frogs, then owls. It's not random noise, it's a conversation. In Hindu cosmology, the universe itself was born from sound, the primordial vibration of Om. So, of course the night speaks. It always has. You just needed to tune in. Suddenly, a conch shell blows in the distance. Its deep, spiraling note slices through the warm air like a blade through butter. That was the call to Vishnu, protector of the cosmos. Nearby, a temple bell swings, releasing a clean, ringing tone meant to purify your thoughts. And you, well, you're already feeling lighter, aren't you? There's a story the monk might tell you if he were in the mood. It's about Ravana, the demon king of Lanka, who once tried to lift Mount Kailash to prove his strength. The gods, unimpressed, pushed it back down, trapping him. Ravana didn't scream. He played music for days. His devotion, expressed through sound, eventually earned him divine forgiveness. Moral of the story: if you mess with a mountain, bring an instrument. As the thunder returns, closer this time, you wrap yourself in a thin cotton shawl left for you on the stone step. It smells of incense and ash. You lean back, eyes half closed, and listen to the temple breathe. A rustle of prayer flags, the creak of ancient doors, the occasional splash of a ceremonial bath in the sacred pool nearby. One last sound before sleep comes. A tabla drum played somewhere unseen, its rhythm gentle and looping, like a heart remembering a lullaby. The monk still hasn't said a word. He doesn't need to, and neither do you. The sands shift beneath your feet once more, but this time they're dry, powder fine, and cool as moonlight. You are standing at the edge of an oasis in the Arabian Peninsula. Palm trees rustle softly above you, and the surface of the water reflects a perfect sliver of crescent moon, like a jewel set in velvet. The night air carries something unusual, a sound not quite wind, not quite voice, just the faintest murmur, as if the desert itself is whispering secrets to the stars. In the time before electric lights and late-night phone scrolling, Bedouins gathered close around small fires, their tents pitched in tight circles. Not for warmth, though it did get cold, but for protection from the spirits that roamed after sunset. These weren't ghosts in the Western sense, no chains, no white sheets. These were the jinn, powerful beings of smokeless fire. Invisible, unpredictable, and above all, loud, or so they believed. You settle onto a thick rug laid out beneath the open sky, where a storyteller once told tales that still echo across the dunes. According to old lore, the jinn traveled with the wind. That eerie howl across the hills wasn't just air slipping through rock. It was a warning, a conversation, a protest. Some even claimed that the whistling of the desert wind was the jinn arguing among themselves, their voices too fast and too ancient for human ears. The chronicler's advice? Don't whistle after dark. The desert listens, and sometimes it answers. Far in the distance, a camel grunts softly. A gentle bell tied to its neck jingles with every step. Sound traveled far in the desert. So far, in fact, that Bedouins became masters of acoustic signaling. A single shout could carry across miles if timed right, usually just before dawn, when the air was still and cold. They could recognize each other's calls like fingerprints. Historians still debate whether this evolved from hunting needs or from sheer loneliness. Probably both. You hear a soft chant now, low and melodic. A woman hums near the fire, a lullaby for the children asleep under blankets stitched with constellations. Her voice blends with the sizzle of flatbread cooking on a pan, with the gurgle of tea bubbling in a metal pot, and with the endless, gentle scraping of sand moving grain by grain in the wind. It's a domestic orchestra, and somehow it brings you peace. An elder tells you that the stars themselves make sound, but only for those who know how to listen, he says, eyes gleaming like polished obsidian. He claims that if you stay awake until the stars change places, until Orion dips below the horizon, you might catch a sound so soft, so ancient, it's more memory than music. You pretend to believe him, but deep down, you're not pretending at all. The fire crackles again, and someone throws in a piece of aromatic wood. The smoke rises in twisting columns, and with it comes a legend of the night traveler, a jinn who could walk unseen but always left a trail of sounds. A clink here, a sigh there, and occasionally a laugh that wasn't yours. Comforting, right? As the wind picks up and the flames flicker lower, you pull the folds of your robe tighter and lay back against a woven pillow. The stars blur slightly, not from tears, but from the heavy calm settling over your body. You think you hear footsteps just beyond the tents. You think you hear your name on the wind. But when you turn to ask, the elder is already asleep, smiling. You listen one last time to the silence between gusts of wind, to the song of sand and spirit, and realize the night isn't empty. It's just full of stories you haven't heard yet. You blink, and the desert dissolves into dense, humid shadows. A wall of green rises around you, thick vines, towering ceiba trees, and leaves so broad they could double as blankets. You're now deep in the jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula, surrounded by the remnants of a once glorious Mayan city. The air hums, not with silence, but with life. Crickets, frogs, distant howler monkeys. Every sound has weight here, like ancient whispers brushing against your ears. The night is alive, and it's talking. Hey guys, welcome to the jungle, literally. The Mayans believed that sound was sacred, a force that could summon gods, awaken spirits, or even open doorways to the underworld. They built temples not just to impress visually, but acoustically. You may be standing near one now, El Castillo, the Temple of Kukulkan. Clap your hands at the base of its grand staircase, and you'll hear the echo return as a chirping sound, mimicking the sacred Quetzal bird. No one fully knows how the acoustics were engineered. Historians still debate whether this was intentional genius or a happy accident involving limestone, geometry, and a lot of trial and error. Spoiler, it was probably intentional. As you walk deeper into the jungle, guided only by torchlight and intuition, you hear it again, something rustling. But this isn't your average tropical soundtrack. According to Mayan lore, the jungle was filled with aluxes, small mischievous spirits that protected sacred places and loved playing tricks. If you hear a giggle but see no one, well, maybe say thank you just to be safe. And definitely don't laugh back. They hate that. You pause by a still pool of water. The surface reflects the stars overhead, scattered like crushed pearls across an obsidian plate. Frogs croak in rhythmic pulses, almost like drums in the distance. You realize those drums aren't frogs, they're actual drums. Ritual music used to echo through these trees, and some say it still does, long after the musicians vanished. The rhythms bounce off trunks and stones, looping endlessly in ghostly reverb. A chilling thought? Maybe, but oddly soothing too. One of the elders who once lived here might tell you the jungle never sleeps. It just sings in a different key after sunset. Nighttime rituals often involved calling to the gods with conch shells and bone flutes, their sounds twirling up into the canopy like smoke. You try to imagine it now, a circle of figures dancing by firelight, shadows flickering on pyramid stones, the air dense with incense and the murmur of prayers. It doesn't feel like imagination, it feels like memory. A sudden splash jolts your attention. Something, animal or spirit, has entered the water, but as quickly as it came, it vanishes. The trees creak, and high above, you hear leaves rustling in patterns too organized to be random. Some believed the gods communicated through birds, whose nighttime calls carried hidden messages. If that's true, you've just heard an entire divine paragraph. You sit on a fallen log, and for a moment, everything goes still. Not silent, never silent, but still. That's when you hear it, a low, droning chant, distant yet clear. No source, no direction, just vibration. Some say this is the sound of the ceiba tree breathing. Others say it's the heartbeat of the jungle. You're not here to argue, you're here to listen. By now, your body has slowed, your mind adrift in a tangle of old foliage and older myths. The chirp of cicadas is like a metronome, ticking time backward. And when you close your eyes, you don't fall asleep. You descend into roots, into soil, into a night that never needed streetlights to shine. The jungle recedes, and suddenly it's cold, crisp enough to bite. You feel snow crunch beneath your feet, the kind that squeaks ever so softly with each step. Above you, the sky dances. Ribbons of green, violet, and soft red swirl like ancient brushstrokes. You're in the Arctic Circle now, among the Inuit peoples of the far north, and the heavens have a voice here. The aurora borealis isn't just a light show, it's a conversation. To the Inuit, the aurora wasn't a passive thing, it was alive. Some believed it was the spirits of the dead playing a game with a walrus skull. Others said it was the souls of animals dancing in thanks. And here's a twist. In several regions, people believed the lights made sounds. High, whistling tones, like wind whispering secrets only the night could understand. Modern science calls this phenomenon auroral sounds and still scratches its head about how they work. Historians debate whether these reports are genuine or just the brain's poetic reaction to awe. Either way, the sky tonight is speaking. You stand beside a snow-sheltered hut, the kind carved from blocks of compressed snow. Yes, an igloo, but don't worry, they're warmer than you'd expect. The cold stings your nose, but you barely notice. The aurora pulses above, and for a fleeting second, you swear you hear it. A soft, metallic hum, like a tuning fork vibrating far above your head. Goosebumps. The Inuit often told children to be respectful under the aurora. Whistling at the lights might draw them closer. Playing too loudly, that could offend them. Some even carried knives when venturing out at night, not for animals, but just in case the lights got curious. Yes, really. That shimmering glow, not always friendly. You probably wouldn't survive this, by the way. Still, there's comfort here. You can see a mother inside the igloo, nursing her child beneath fur blankets, humming an old lullaby that mixes with the crackle of the oil lamp. Outside, a hunter pauses to look up at the sky, bow in hand, not to hunt, but to listen. That's the thing. In these northern cultures, listening wasn't passive. It was a way of being. The world didn't speak louder than necessary, but if you stayed still, it told you everything. Even the snow has a voice. The crunch beneath your boots shifts pitch depending on the temperature, the weight, the angle of your step. The Inuit could read this like you'd read a book. Was someone here yesterday? An hour ago? What kind of animal passed through? The answers were in the sound. In some communities, elders would tell stories by mimicking the calls of animals or imitating the breath of the wind. These weren't just bedtime tales, they were tools of survival, encoded wisdom passed down not through scrolls or tablets, but through tone, cadence, and rhythm. You wonder how many songs have been lost simply because no one knew how to listen anymore. But tonight, you're here, and the sky is still singing. You lie down in the snow, cushioned by thick hides and a generous helping of cultural imagination. Above, the aurora begins to twist in new directions, drawing long arcs like the brushstrokes of a forgotten deity. The colors pulse gently, and for the first time, the wind hushes. You hear nothing, and in that nothing, everything. The light feels closer now, like a blanket tucking you in. The hum is gone, or maybe it was never there. Your thoughts start to drift, snowflakes melting softly against your face, your body sinking gently into a bed of legends. Now the icy breath of the Arctic melts away, and you're stepping into warmth again. But this time, it's not the sun. It's the deep, still heat of the earth herself. You descend into a cave, torch in hand, walls slick with moisture and time. Shadows flicker across ancient markings, hands, animals, symbols that feel more like echoes than drawings. You're not alone. You hear it, a low hum, a steady drip, a soft, natural reverb that turns your footsteps into whispers of ancient voices. Welcome to the sacred caves, places where the ancients didn't just hear the world, they spoke with it. In Paleolithic times, caves weren't just shelters from the weather, they were portals to the divine. Some were chosen not for their depth, but for their acoustics. Historians have noticed that cave art is often located in the areas with the strongest echoes. Coincidence? Not likely. The artists knew the power of sound. They sang, clapped, and drummed, allowing their voices to bounce back at them like answers from another realm. The deeper the echo, the deeper the connection to the unseen. You walk deeper now. The torchlight catches the faintest line of red ochre, perhaps a bison, maybe a spirit. No labels here, just presence. And then something magical happens. You speak. Maybe just a soft hello, or maybe your name. It comes back to you, distorted, elongated, transformed. It feels sacred, chilling, but in a comforting way, like someone very old just acknowledged you. In Francis Chauvet Cave, some chambers carry sound so precisely that a single note can travel, curl, and return with the weight of memory. Some scholars argue these chambers were intentionally used for rituals. Others think the resonance was discovered by accident. Either way, the effect is the same. The cave listens. And then there's the hum. In some caves, standing in just the right spot, you can feel a frequency that seems to vibrate not in your ears, but in your bones. Some call it the Earth's voice. Others think it's airflow through narrow passages. But the feeling that you're not alone is undeniable. You probably wouldn't survive a month in the Stone Age, by the way, but you'd die awestruck. Now imagine an ancient human, fur-wrapped, paint-smeared, heart-thumping, stepping into this same space. They light a fire, and the flames lick the walls. The shadows dance. They clap, and the cave claps back. In that moment, it's not a rock. It's a theater, a church, a womb. Somewhere between art and acoustics, they find meaning. In certain Mesoamerican traditions, caves were believed to be the mouths of gods. People whispered prayers into them, hoping the earth would carry their words to the underworld. In some places, echoes weren't just sounds, they were responses. The difference between silence and reply could mean the success of a harvest or the birth of a healthy child. You pause. The cave settles into a silence so thick it feels like velvet. You hear a water droplet fall into a shallow pool. Plink. It echoes tenfold. And for a moment, time folds. You're both guest and ghost, here and then, now and always. You sit, your back against the cave wall. You close your eyes. The stone is cold, but not unkind. You breathe in, and the cave breathes out.
You've traveled far tonight, not in miles, but in memory. Through silent deserts, over wind-swept plains, into the heart of sleeping cities. You've listened with the ears of the past, let the night speak through ancient voices, and allowed the old world's quiet symphony to surround you. You didn't just hear history tonight, you felt it, like a soft breath against your cheek, like the rustle of linen robes beneath constellations unchanged for thousands of years. Now everything slows. The stars don't twinkle anymore. They float, steady and sure, like lanterns gently drifting across a dark river. The wind has grown softer too, wrapping around your shoulders like a familiar blanket. Even your thoughts begin to settle. They don't race now, they meander, like a story you've heard before, one that ends the same way every time, with peace. There's no more to uncover this evening. The temples are quiet, the storytellers are asleep, even the owls have hushed their questions. What remains is only stillness and a growing warmth in your chest, like the gentle glow of coals after the fire has dimmed. You've touched something tonight, something older than memory, but kinder than time. So close your eyes, if they're not already closed. Let the past dissolve into soft shadows. Let the stars hang quietly above you. Let your breath fall into rhythm with the earth. And know that you're safe here. The past fades gently now, and sleep finds you. And may the presence of the Lord illuminate you and your family. Thank you for watching until the end. Sweet dreams.
Thank you.